Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to be talking about dealing with fear about the future. So, thank you for tuning in. I often am debating this question. Do I accept the risks of my rheumatoid arthritis? Actually, I should say of my uncontrolled rheumatoid arthritis. Or do I accept the risk of my medication to control my rheumatoid arthritis? And you might be having this question or other questions that are similar to this. And it's not just an intellectual question. It's a question that's filled with so much fear, at least it is for me. Because when posing these two options to myself, I either have uncontrolled RA or I have the high risks of medications. Um, Both outcomes seem pretty dire. Um, and I just find myself concerned at times. And this is, first of all, I just want to say this is a completely normal experience, right? You might be experiencing this, um, and it's completely normal to be experiencing it. I experience it, and I also have all these tools to help me work through it. So I want to share some of those tools, or share some of the, um, really just my recent experience of how I have been working through this fear. And so, um, So that's going to be the topic for today. I'll go about 10 to 15 minutes. If there's more to talk about, I'll create a part two. But here we go. Let's talk about dealing with fear about your future. So I've been engaging I've been doing two things around this. And I'd like to hear what you've been doing about it. Actually, before we even do that, share that. What question are you dealing with that's similar to this? You can put that in the comments. What question are you asking yourself? Is it similar to mine? My question again is, do I accept the risk of my uncontrolled rheumatoid arthritis, or do I accept the risk of my medication that would control my rheumatoid arthritis? Um, you might have RA, or you might have some other physical limitation. What question are you debating? What question is coming up for you that could be creating some fear about your future? So go ahead and share that in the comments. And if you'd like the notes from this live or any of the other lives that I'm doing, there's a link in the comments. You can click the link and I'll email you the notes from this live and all my future thoughts, my future topics and future thoughts. Um, okay, so let's talk about fear about the future. Um, so I'll share now a little bit more about kind of what I've been going through, how I've been dealing like what I've been experiencing around this, and then some thoughts about how to work through it. So I have, of course, I've had rheumatoid arthritis for over 16 years. Um, Now it's been over 18 years. I've been saying that for 16 years for like at least a year or so. So it's probably been, yeah, it's been like 18 years. And I have had chronic pain for most of that time until about 5 years ago, and I learned some things that helped me process emotion and fear. And that processing of emotion and fear actually led to less chronic pain. Um, but guess what? I still experience fear. It's like just learning how to process it, just learning the skills to kind of work through it, um, isn't going to eliminate it. And that's part of what, like, so much of what I talk about here is um, living an abundant life, living a full life despite pain, right? Despite the impact of a physical limitation or despite the impact of emotions like fear. Um, because my life has changed dramatically over the past 5 years since I've been practicing these skills. But the circumstances of fear, of rheumatoid arthritis, they're still there. They're still part of my life. And so, how do we work through those circumstances and live our best life or live with vitality, right? With excitement, with enthusiasm, with hope, with um, motivation to create something, do something, be present in a certain way. All of these things that for so many years I just felt incapable of doing, that now I feel more capable of doing. So that's what this is about. And so over the past 5 years, of course, I've learned these tools that help me work through that so much. But I still deal with this question: the risk of the of uncontrolled RA versus the risk of my medication. And um, and I've had multiple conversations with my doctor about this. I've talked to friends and family. I have a few family members who are also doctors, and I'm getting perspective. I'm getting information. I also have I'm in Facebook communities. I'm seeing what people are saying about the medications and other things. And what I've realized over the past few years, as I've been more focused on just getting more information, I still experience the fear, and I see myself latch onto fearful information. And this is what our brain does. If we are operating from a fearful place, as we're gathering information, our brain is going to filter the information, or it's only going to remember the information that it thinks is relevant. And so if you have a fear about something, the brain is going to latch on to things that are potentially threatening, the things that are good reason for your fear. And this is so important to realize because even after having this awareness, as I've collected information and been asking this question a lot, at times I forgot. I forgot about this. I just thought that I was seeing all these facts, all this information that was like confirming that this is a very dire situation. Uncontrolled RA is bad. And the disease modifying drugs, bad. So and that's all I could see. And this again, it's so easy to forget this. To forget that your brain is actually filtering out the information so that you're only seeing or you're only remembering the things that are fearful, the things that are bad. Um, so that is like step number one. That is like foundational, and it is to realize that filter that's always taking place. Your brain is always filtering. Why? Because we can't handle all the information. Like we don't have the capacity. We're not computers with um, gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of memory. Our brain has to filter through the information, and its filtering mechanism is what's relevant, right? What's relevant. Um, and so that filtering mechanism, it's programmed by you, right? The brain is taking cues from you, what you're intentionally thinking. Those intentional thoughts, those thoughts that are practiced, those things that you are focused on frequently, is what informs the brain. So if I'm frequently thinking about this dire situation that I'm in, then the brain picks up on that cue. It's like, oh, there's this thought pattern of this dire situation, so it's going to just collect the facts or just remember the facts or the pieces of information that are relevant. And of course, so what do I end up with? A bunch of information that proves that I'm in a dire situation. But this could be the reason why I use this word filtering is because that's exactly what it is. If instead if you had a different belief about your situation, guess what? You are going to find information about it. Your brain will start filtering different information and remembering different information to prove that you're in a great situation, right? If that was your fundamental foundational belief is I'm in a great situation, then your brain is going to filter the facts and the information to prove that. So that's the first question. That's the first thing to be aware of. Number one, that this is taking place. And then second, from what place are you operating from? And being so focused on understanding that, seeing what place you're operating from. And when I say operating from, I mean the place that you continue to um, believe in, the place that you continue to practice in your thinking, right? Because you have all of the thoughts, we have all the beliefs, all of it's kind of happening all the time, and what you decide to latch onto and to really believe in then informs that filter, and the brain starts filtering based on that. Okay, all right. So um, I'm going to focus in now on two parts of my experience around this recently. Actually, when I say recently, it's been like the past 2 years. And I've been talking to God about it. I've been talking to God about this question. Um, do I accept the risk of my uncontrolled RA, or do I accept the risk of my medication? And um, and I've also been asking my doctor. So as I mentioned, I've been in Facebook groups. I've seen other things, so I am taking in information. But there's these two aspects that I want to just kind of narrow in on for today: asking God and asking my doctor. Um, because there's some really fascinating things about that experience that I've learned, and it all has to do with some of this foundation I've shared. I have been receiving answers from God on this question, and and okay, this is actually really vulnerable for me to talk about this, and I will go ahead and share it. And the reason why I'll share it is because um, I'm not afraid. Actually, I am. There's part of me that is afraid. We all are afraid, and I'm afraid. And I'm also courageous I'm kind of settling into some courage to let things be as they are. And so what I mean by that when I'm referring to God is that the answer in the conversation I've been having with him over the past year or so um, could in fact like the answer and that direction from God might change going forward. And that seems threatening. It's like if I share this, especially if I share this and people know about kind of these intimate experiences I'm having with God, and then if in a year or so that my experience with Him is different, people will use that against me or against God, right? In a way to kind of invalidate that process of prayer, and or to invalidate faith and all those things. So that is that's something that as believers and people who are practicing faith, we have to deal with all the time. And I'm going to accept that, right? I'm going to be like, that's fine. The things that I'll share now, or the direction that God has given me now, could change in the future, and so be it, right? That's just how it is, and that's what the faith experience is. I'm never going to let that mean that prayer, the process of prayer doesn't work, or that God isn't real, it's all made up in my head. I'm never going to make it mean that, because honestly, I don't really, really, really know. Like, um, so how I handle that is like, hey, if my message from God changes over time, that just means I'm gonna make it mean over the past year or so, I wasn't ready for the message. That might be a new message going forward, or I didn't have the same information a year ago that I might have in 6 months from now, or whatever it might be, right? So that's kind of how I work through those things. All right. Now, having said that, what has he been telling me? He's told me that I don't need my medication, and I am scared about that. And I I'm still taking my medication, by the way, and God told me this like a year ago. And so then I've also been dealing with all the guilt and all the shame, and like I'm like, why can't I just like follow God? He says I don't need my medication. Um, I'm taking Enbrel, which is a disease modifying drug for my RA. And um, so that's the answer I received from him. But here's what happened. As soon as he shared that with me, for many months, like for the past year, I haven't talked to him about it much more than that. Um, I have then been spinning in these fears, like, okay, I might just stop the medication. And what does that mean? Like, what if my RA flares up and like gets really bad? And then what if it can't be controlled? Right now, it's actually in pretty good like remission. And I credit that to God and to medication I've been on for 16 years. And Enbrel I've been, let's see, it's been like 7 years. And so I'm like, what if I stopped it and then in a year my RA gets really bad and then I go back on Enbrel and things don't get better. It's like I'm in a good situation now in terms of the disease being controlled. Why risk that? And of course, I know why I would risk it. Like, there's all the other fears I have about the risks of the medication. And anyway, so God tells me like over a year ago, you don't need the medication. And then I kind of like, I just, I kind of stopped talking to him about it and I just have been afraid to stop the medication. And this has been going on for months. And I also, what I noticed myself doing is going to sources like more like the Facebook groups and um, and even like searching online. I've been going to other sources of information other than God and other than my doctor. That was really fascinating to watch myself do. And of course, I wasn't fully aware that I was doing it, but my brain was, I was in fear. And so then I went and I was like collecting more information. I was kind of latching onto the information that confirmed my fears. Um, and so recently, I've become aware of this. I caught that pattern. I'm like, oh, look at what I'm doing. I'm no longer talking to God about it. I'm no longer really talking to my doctor a whole lot about it. I'm finding all this evidence to confirm all my fears. And so once I caught it, I was able to do something about it. And I am in the process of continuing the dialogue with God. And recently just brought it up again with my doctor and had a and what happened in the doctor's office, this is also really fascinating. This is what could happen for you, is I had all the reasons come up about why I shouldn't ask these questions to my doctor. And what was coming up for me was like over the past, 2 years, almost most of my doctor's appointments have been me questioning why I should be taking the medication. And and my doctor's heard enough of that. That's what my brain was offering. It's like, don't bring this up again. Your doctor has heard enough. And so you might have versions of that. Whenever you're maintaining dialogue in some way, your brain, especially if there's like some fear, it's going to kind of offer all these really creative reasons why you should shut down, why you should stop the dialogue. Um, because the brain is afraid, right? When you open up to dialogue, it actually is vulnerable. It's kind of scary. It's like, ooh, what other information might my doctor share with me this time? Or if I ask a different question, what information might come and what might that mean for me? And it's kind of scary. And so that's why the brain is interested in shutting you down and stopping the dialogue because there's it's a scary world and we're operating from a fearful place. So let's go in the cave. Let's just go in the cave and but what happens in the cave? You just sit there in fear. You're already in fear. You're already feeling threatened. This is how I work through it. I'm like, I've been afraid of this question now for over a year. And so um, I'm not creating any more threat or more fear by opening up to dialogue, by reopening the dialogue and staying in dialogue. My brain thinks there's more threat that's going to come from that, but I just reassure it. I'm like, no, we're already in fear. We're already afraid of these things. There could be some other information I gathered that could be fearful or concerning, but I'm already afraid. so, so let's just go for it. So then I practice like courage. That's why courage is a beautiful thing because courage isn't relevant or isn't needed without fear. But when you're in fear, then um, to work through the fear, courage plays a role. And you can really practice courage and lean into it and use courage. So, anyway, that's what I did. And I brought it up again with my doctor. And I said, listen, I, I would like to, I would like to better understand Enbrel and like the side effects. And I've asked you this a few times before, but, I still am not entirely like settled on the question. And I'm not sure what the best way is to get the information. Is there like a guide? Are there resources? And so, of course, she said yes, and she kept me also with a pharmacist that helped direct me to some resources. Um, And then she also shared more, way more than she has before. And so part of what that additional, that more of that sharing, I believe, from her and that additional information I came upon came from me practicing this courage, came from me catching this pattern I was in, that I'm in fear and I'm actually um, unintentionally, excuse me, unintentionally keeping myself um, from receiving information. I'm like unintentionally kind of closing off the dialogue. So once I caught that, then I'm like, whew, I breathe into that, and I um, and practice courage to create what I want, which is I want dialogue, I want more information, and I want information not just from Facebook groups and other people who are going to have all kinds of different experience. I want to come back to dialogue with God and with my doctor. And so I was able to have that experience, and it was so relieving to have such a honest and open conversation with my doctor. And and I'm in that, I'm in the process too of, like I said, kind of reopening this dialogue with God, and we'll see where it goes from here. Like I don't have a conclusion yet on like what my next step is, whether I'm going to make a change and stop taking Enbrel, or whether I'm going to stay on it, and I don't know yet. But if again, if you are dealing with some physical limitation or RA, if you're on some type of medication, this could be a question that you are wrestling with as well. And so I just wanted to share this story to, maybe there's something useful that comes from it for you. Just in hearing my experience and connecting in that way, that's the power of community. Or you can take away these very specific um, insights or tools, which is number one, um, understand that our brain operates with a filter. Number two, understand that the mechanism that kind of programs that filter is your intentional thinking, the things that you practice believing with intent, or the things that you, the belief that you latch onto, whatever that is the mechanism the brain uses then to apply the filter and filter information. So know that that's happening. When you know that that's happening, then you can make very informed decisions. Um, you can act with intention. You can decide how you want to move forward, how you want to get more information, or um, put yourself in a position where you're more at peace with this question, whatever question you're dealing with, or that you can create clarity on what to do next. That's where all I'm going to leave it. That's where I'm going to leave it for now. Again, if you want notes on this, um, or some of the future content I'll be sharing, go ahead and click the link to be added to the email list, and I'll email you the notes from this and future content. And thank you so much for tuning in. It's such a pleasure to be with you, to share in this community, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.